Hi everybody, before we get started today, I want to invite you to please subscribe to our channels, whether it be SoundCloud or YouTube. Hit that notification bell so that you receive notification of when new content comes out from us. Sign up for our courses and check out all of our content over at CatholicStudiesAcademy.com. And you can see we have a lot of freebies over there along with our paid courses taught by our lecturers, both in philosophy and in theology. We also have books by our lecturers available that you can click through from our website. So please check out all of our content over there at CatholicStudiesAcademy.com. Enjoy the podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Take Every Thought Captive, our weekly look at the Catholic intellectual tradition and an exploration of the authors, books, and topics that have shaped Catholic thinking for 2,000 years. My name is Jason Gale, and I'm joined this week by Dr. Benjamin Smith, our lecturer in philosophy for Catholic Studies Academy. And as we kick off this new year of 2021, first, Dr. Smith and Dr. Bruzzichelli and I just want to thank you for all the support we've had over the past couple of years. We love doing what we are doing. We love having the opportunity to discuss these topics of importance, these topics of consequence. And we just want to thank all of our listeners for giving us just such a successful year and previous year of that as well. And we want to keep continuing to do that. So please continue to support us. Know that we're very grateful for everything that you've given us, the feedback that we've heard, and just know from the bottom of our heart, thank you for everything that y'all have provided us, as much as we try to provide you with solid content and good discussion. All right, our topic for today to kick off our new year, as it's not quite yet in shambles, not quite yet. But our topic for today is getting your mind straight in 2021. And so it's going to be, as much as we're going to rely on philosophy and good Catholic wisdom, we're going to also try to hopefully make this very practical for our listeners, because 2021 is already shaping up to be filled with uncertainties, anxieties, conflicts, anger, and sometimes we don't even know what to do. We're just probably kind of standing around saying, I don't know whether to be angry, sad, what do I do? Do I buy, gun, what is it? Beans, bandages, and bullets, or, or what do I do? So we want to try to give you kind of an intellectual survival guide, maybe, for 2021. And so, Dr. Smith, kick us off here, with all of the uncertainties and things that are happening, and how should we set our minds as we go into this new year of chaos?
Yeah, right, of chaos. Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, Jason, we can just kind of go back and forth here on different ideas we have. But I really just sort of am approaching this a little bit this morning with a kind of a heavy heart, in terms of where we are as a country, and the future for my kids and all that sort of thing. I mean, it is a daunting time. I see a great, we don't need to detail all of the things that are going on. Everybody knows the conflicts associated with COVID-19 and the conflicts associated with our current political situations. It's tough times, and I think a lot of good people feel depressed, confused, disoriented, and I certainly sympathize with that. I think where I would like to begin is something that I was thinking about the other day that's kind of rooted in just our family prayer practice. Which, often we pray formal prayers, we recite the Psalms together. But sometimes, we also pray extempore and, or just offer our own personal prayers. And when I do that, often I end the prayer with a petition for clear minds and grateful hearts. Yeah. And I thought, man, actually that's not actually a bad idea for our country right now.
Nope. Good luck with that.
That's right. Let's start with clarity. And as a philosopher, I can speak to that, I think, more effectively than anything else. I think we need to have clear thinking. Right now, there's so much confusion. We talk about Jason, the darkening of the intellect, based on original sin. I think right now, I feel like we're all going around with almost like an extra darkened mind, right? Like as if the mind, kind of like the public mind of America, is just darkened, And I think we've got to break through that to some degree, at least, and try to think clearly. What does it mean to think clearly? Clarity means a certain openness, a certain accuracy, right? A lack of fog, a lack of distraction, focus, those sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
And I think the most effective way to get back to clarity is to get back to simplicity, is to simplify, right? There's so many things. It's amazing, Jason, the amount of information we are presented, the number of claims we're presented with, the amount of theories we're presented with, predictions, all sorts of things, right? And it's just like the mind, and I think even psychologists and neurologists have spoken this. Our minds are just not set up to process that much stuff.
Sure.
Right. And I don't think we can process that much stuff effectively. And it certainly bogs down clarity. When there's that much going on in your mind, you can't think clearly. There's too much in the way.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It just weighs you down, So I think what we need to do in order to get clarity is to get simple, and return to a certain kind of simplicity. I don't mean naivete or stupidity, of course, but or ignorance, but simplicity, and that means going back to first principles. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually goes right along with one of the before we hop into first principles. That actually goes along with one of the things that I was thinking about. Is on a very practical level. When we look at just everything and everybody in the world, that's great, and we do live in this society that does have this kind of global outreach and connectedness, but God has not said to you, Dr. Smith, you're going to be responsible for the people on the globe. And I'm not going to give you too much, just the people on the globe. Like, no, God's given you a very specific set of people that is going to be influential on your judgment. Right. So same with me, I'm not going to be responsible for the jerk in high school that's posting a bunch of commie stuff on Facebook.
Right.
I'm going to be responsible for my wife and kids,
Right,
and so I think, for, when you say simplify, one of the first things I think we could do is, think and bring this to your prayer, bring this to your, to your meditation and discernment, that, make a list. Who are the people that God has placed into my care? If you're a catechist, well, that's going to be your students too. It's going to be your wife, your kids, your mother, your father, your siblings.
Right.
It's a very small group of people. It's, and most of them, guess what, are not online. That's not where that's not where your interactions with them are going to happen. Except for us here on Take Every Thought Captive. Yeah, that's right. We want you to stay with us. But seriously, look at the ones that God has placed into your immediate care, the ones that you're going to be held accountable for at your judgment. So you have your quote unquote audience. You have the people that you have your responsibilities to. That's a good place to begin. That's a good place to begin to simplify, is to say, okay, well, who are the ones towards which I am going to be acting in this way and stuff. So, but when we get into that acting, we are going to need some first principles.
Sure.
So how do we then set our mind to begin to go?
Yeah. So I think, when you think about first principles, these are foundations, foundational beliefs, foundational ideas. You could put it that way. I think, there are several different ones you could start with, but one very practical one is to always return to the question of the ultimate end.
Yeah.
To know God, right? To know God, to serve God in this life, and to enjoy Him forever in the next. Is a way of putting it, right? To glorify God, right? God is our ultimate end. Our relationship with God, our glorification of God, our service to God, our enjoyment of God, and in eternal life, right? That is our ultimate end, right? This life. And that's not a cheap throwaway. That really is our ultimate end. And when I teach that in different settings, one way I try to bring this out is to say, if you're achieving that ultimate end during your life, and you're in the lowliest and most humble and most ridiculed position, right? Say you're something like a janitor, right?
Yeah.
But you're living for the ultimate end, and you're achieving that ultimate end, you're progressing that ultimate end, you're successful.
Yeah.
Right. That, like, you're winning. Yeah, like that is the and you get your kids there too, right? It doesn't matter if you ever go on a fancy vacation, if you ever own a big house, none of that. All that's crap, right? Compared to the ultimate end, right? So even if, things are bad in your country, even if there are conflicts that are going on and injustices and problems and deceptions or whatever, okay, but that doesn't keep you from getting your ultimate end, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't keep you from living for your ultimate end, right? Knowing and loving God. So that's not, let's say, just pie in the sky. That if your ultimate end is God, there should be a certain detachment that you have to the circumstances of your life, right? That is, you're not defined by the circumstances of your life, your country, your culture. You're defined by your ultimate end, that I'm living for God, and that can't be taken from me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean,
Period.
we just celebrated the feast of Saint Andre Bessette, who he became a saint, recently, like 2010, I think, like that. He was a porter, and he did laundry. I think he was like a sacristan too. Like those were essentially his duties. Now he's a saint, and I mean, he's he performed so many different miracles and things, but he wasn't, he had simple duties, and he did them with great joy and love and holiness.
That's right.
And God was able to use that as an instrument, in this case, for the world to see, but which is probably not going to be your case. But it's not, not everything is for the world to see. It's again for those that God has placed into your care.
Yeah, and think about having an audience. At the end of the day, right? I would say we have almost we have an audience in this life, but another way to think about it is we have an audience of one, right?
Yeah,
it's God, right?
Or is it three?
Three.
Yeah, I'm joking.
I got you. But pretty good audience. I mean, at the end of the day, we do everything before the face of God, and that's pleasing Him. That's what matters, right? And everything else, it matters. I'm not saying other things aren't good or important. They are, but they're good or important ultimately because of their ordination towards God, right?
Right.
And so we need to always have that ultimate end in perspective. That God alone, right, is our ultimate end. The other first principle I would say is that this is again a kind of a practical first principle, but it involves the speculative intellect as well.
Sure.
Which is that truth matters, right? That is, that truth, right, is our good, right?
Yeah.
Right. And that cuts across a lot of things, right? Certainly we need to try to make our thoughts true, right? We need to think truly. That means thinking according to reality. And often that means not thinking with our passions. Okay.
But that's not the spirit of 2021, Ben. What if we've learned one thing from 2020? It's act on your passions and nothing else.
Blind passion. That's right.
We left our reason at the last rest stop. So.
That's right.
Onward.
I want to say, thinking and feeling are not the same.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying that emotions don't matter. Emotions are wonderful things. Life would be very boring without them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, emotions must not rule. If there's one universal lesson of classical philosophy, right, it's that reason is to rule, not passion.
Yeah.
And so, while it's good to have passions, it's wonderful that we have them, that we experience them. We need to let our reason rule us, and that means we need to look at reality. And sometimes, I get it, that takes a lot of discipline, right, and focus. And again, a willingness to detach from our feelings.
Well, and I think a key point there is, for our listeners to understand, when we say detach from our feelings, we mean that, the virtuous man is not the one who doesn't feel. In fact, the virtuous person is one that feels very deeply.
Sure.
And you'll find, people that are virtuous, they're full of passion, right?
Sure.
But they're full of passion about the right things in the right way, because they've gone through like you said, the discipline of thinking clearly through these things,
right,
and trying to align their passions with what is true, good, and beautiful. And when those passions arise that are not aligned with that, then they can set those aside. And that's what you mean by being detached. It doesn't mean that we go around not feeling, but that we go around feeling about the right things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, to the right degree. And what makes a feeling good or bad, like a passion about, you said, like passionate feelings about the true, the good, and the beautiful. Well, it's our reason that lets us know, right?
Yeah.
What those are, right? So, yeah, I mean, you're right. We don't, by detachment, I don't mean the abolition of passion, right? Or destruction of passion, but certainly the subordination, right? That is, that reason needs to. I mean, that passion needs to be subordinate to reason.
Yeah.
So, like in our thinking, we need to really think truly. Socrates in is a great example of this, I believe, in the dialogue, the Gorgias.
Yeah.
One of my favorite dialogues. I enjoyed teaching many times. In there, he has a long argument. If you ever read any of the dialogues, long arguments, but he has a little. It stops in the middle, and he has a little aside, almost, right?
Yeah.
Where he stops the argument and he says, Gorgias, I don't know if we should continue this discussion. And Gorgias says, well, why not? And he says, well, I want to know first whether or not you are a man like I am. And he says, well, what is that? And Socrates says, I would rather be shown that I was wrong when I am wrong than win and continue in my error.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, that's right on, right? There's a kind of, I think in class, sometimes we call it Socratic humility, which Socrates doesn't always come off as humble, but a kind of Socratic humility where, look, what matters is in our arguments, in our clashes, is that the truth comes out, not that I would, right? And that's kind of hard, especially when, the thumos, that sense of pride and spiritedness starts to rise up in us. We want to kind of smash our opponent. But what we need to try to remember is truth, right?
Yeah.
Reality, right? And that goes both, I think, for our thinking and our discussions, as well as our behavior. We need to act in accordance with the truth, right? So we need to, think truly and act truly in that.
Yeah,
in
and
way.
truth is something that is distinct from you and the other person you're talking about.
That's right.
Or talking to, right?
That's right.
So I mean, as much as you're trying to get the person in front of you to understand and realize the truth, it's not this your truth, my truth thing. It's
that's right.
Truth.
It's true.
We're trying to get at truth, and then and you can come from that,
And you might want to have to recognize that maybe you don't have it. The truth is outside of us, including me, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I might be wrong.
Right.
It's a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
I don't think we're almost never told to say that, right? But I might be wrong, right? About many things. So there's a lot of other first principles we could deal with here. I just wanted to give you two examples that I think, is one is just remember the ultimate end. The
Yeah.
ultimate end is knowing God. And second, remember that truth matters, right? The truth is our good, right? So I think if we can focus on those two ideas, that and along with others, I would include, serving the common good, that life isn't worth living without friends. It's an old Aristotelian principle, right?
It's a wise one. Yeah.
Yeah. That God is in control in terms of providence. I'm not going to, that's one, we kind of as Christians kind of throw that around lightly. Sometimes that God is in control, but really, like you and I have had, I don't want to belabor it because we've had several podcasts dedicated to the idea of divine providence. But that's another one. Just keep that in mind. Like that should frame the way you look at yourself, the world, and history, and present events, right? That this is all part of God's plan, right?
Right. And then go read the story of the Vendée and you'll be fine. Just kidding. Yeah. Read it. It's a great story, but
actually, my reading plan had shifted the other day to Ecclesiastes. That's what I've been focusing on reading the last couple of days. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity. Anyway, so
that's awesome. Yeah, and I think so much of that also goes to when you were talking about simplicity is, I think one of the big spiritual battles right now that everybody has to face is a war of minds, and not just, and I don't mean that of just ideas, but I also mean that with regards to like you were talking about in the beginning with we're going to flood, just send in a battalion of information into your mind and just overwhelm it to the point where it simply breaks down. And I think that's something that Catholics in this new year need to be very very wary of, is this bombardment of not just ideas but also of allowing things. I mean, what was part of the sin of Adam was that he didn't guard it, right? It wasn't necessarily, or it was that he ate of the fruit of the tree of good and evil, but he also did not guard, the serpent got in somehow. And I think it's similar to the war going on with with minds now. We have to be on guard for that.
Right.
And so one of the things that I think that's huge in this is, especially for Americans, we're obsessed with statistics. So one thing that I think is important to focus on in 2021 with regards to keeping a sane mind and a holy soul is to focus on quality, not quantity. Throw your statistics out the window. It doesn't matter how many articles you consume or how many posts you make or things like that. But and the thing is even Saint Francis de Sales, even a lot of the spiritual masters, when they talk about prayer, the quality of the prayer is way more than the quantity. Now, if you're able to up both, well, God love you. That's awesome. That's what we should aim for, and we should have spiritual goals in that way. But I think that focus on the quality of our prayer life, even if it's small, again, there's beauty in simplicity, and there's humbleness in simplicity. And I think also that that quality will serve the peace of the soul. In this time.
Absolutely.
And so I think one of the things maybe for 2021 is how can we keep how do we keep the peace of our soul during this time? What do you think about or what do you try to do with regards to just maintaining a peace, especially when everything is uncertain? I mean,
I think peace of soul I think is very important. I think peace of soul doesn't mean inaction. It doesn't mean that you're not engaged with things. It just means that you are engaged with clarity and a stable, well-rounded kind of soul, right?
Yeah.
Right? That your soul has its priorities right. It's well ordered, and you engage from that perspective. Also, you have your priorities right. You're loving God, you're loving your family, all those sorts of things. Two resources that I find really useful. It's kind of maybe a little surprising. Late classical philosophy.
Yes, that is surprising.
Was very interesting. It had its theoretical bent, but it also had a very practical bent.
Yeah.
And two different schools of philosophy that I think are useful actually are skepticism and stoicism. Now, they were opposed to each other, and I'm certainly not by any stretch a radical skeptic. But there are some things about skepticism that I think are useful, or I would say a moderate or healthy skepticism.
Sure.
Okay. The skeptics actually practiced skepticism because they believed that vice and anxiety and strife arose from dogmatism. That is, believing that you know with certitude that which you do not know with certitude. Right? You know what I mean? Like ignorant certitude. Or passionate ignorance, right? They would say it was a real vice. Yeah. And I kind of think there's something to that, right? Again, I'm not a radical skeptic by any stretch. I'm a realist. Sure. But I also think at a practical level, there is a healthy amount of skepticism that we should have, especially about ourselves, right? And our own knowledge. Yeah. I remember, when I got to teach logic on a regular basis, I would, towards the end of logic class, talk about what was useful about what the students had learned, right? And one of them, and I came up with these kind of mottos or maxims of being a logician. I said, now that you've gone through this class, you need to go out and spread the good news of logic in the rest of your life, right? And you need to overcome one of the greatest errors of our society, logophobia. and here are some maxims to help you overcome logophobia. And one of the maxims was logician, cure yourself. That actually in terms of logic, right, certainly we can use logic and reason to cure the thoughts of others, right, of evil or irrationality, but we should do so with ourselves. And that's what I think, a healthy kind of skepticism should make us realize the limits of our knowledge. Yeah. Right. Yeah, we don't actually know everything. Right. There was a phrase. There was a little book that came out a couple of years ago. I don't remember the author's name right now, but it was a very small book, but it's very good. And excuse the expletive, but it was entitled Bullshit. And the whole idea was that in modern society, we've developed the habit of claiming to know way more than we do, right? We all act like we are know-it-alls and experts, and the other side is just stupid, right? Yeah. And a lot of that's based on BS, frankly, right? Like we're BSing, we're just making stuff up, exaggerating, etc., right? And we just need to stop it, right? It just got to stop. What we need to do is to recognize and say the limits of our knowledge. We don't know everything, right? If you think about your own data set, it's always limited, right? And that doesn't mean we should say that there are no certitudes. I think there are certitudes. I actually think that where we get certainties in principles and universal truths, it's when we move to contingent and particular things that people get so adamant about that actually there is more uncertainty, okay? And I think, I would just say check yourself, like slow down. I don't know the number of people I know who say, "Oh, I've researched such and such." I'm like, what did you do? Like 10 Google searches? That's not research.
I went through 4 pages of Google. Like that's not research. That's Googling.
I'm sorry, you were going to say something, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, it's just and this certainty about uncertainties. If somebody, a good way to spot it, I'll say this, and this could be a helpful tool if you're out and about, even within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to make the claim out loud to somebody, well, that's it's just true. That's well, that's a proven fact. Well, okay, if you have to say that, you either have to show that it's a proven fact. You can't just state something, and the same within your mind. And this is where I think, like the skepticism comes in. Okay, I think this is true. Okay, well, prove it to yourself.
Right.
Go through the evidence. And if you're like, well, it's kind of, well, my sources, was, shadywebsite.com. Well, like maybe that's not a trustworthy news source, or maybe that's, so, go through that process of going through it. But also, one of the things that I think is important is that we don't sit here and do this, that we don't analyze everything that comes our way. Again, this is where I was talking about, the mind needs to also be guarding some, if somebody makes some claim about an election or something like that. Okay. Like if I, ask yourself, if I go through this process of proving or disproving this, at least in my intellect, will that have an effect on my life? Probably not. Okay. Is it worth my time to do this? Right. Because because that's the other thing is you're the devil wants to take that time away. The devil wants to take that time away from your vocation, right?
Right. That's a good point. And I think, we talk about the bombardment of information.
Yeah.
Something that's come back, an image that's come back to me over and over again, in really the last month, is the allegory of the cave.
Yeah.
Which is such a powerful image because it's so true. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day and mentioned, for philosophers, that's some of the best material we've got. Right? and the reason, I can present the allegory of the cave to almost any audience, and most people are going to find it interesting, right?
Yeah.
And the reason is, man, it speaks to the human experience, I think.
Sure.
And I'm not going to go through the details of the allegory of the cave. I encourage you, if you've never read the allegory of the cave, just put that in your search engine. You'll pull it up real quickly. It's a great, great little allegory image of the human condition. But if anybody's familiar with it all, right, the idea is that the story is that there's a group that all human beings, or most human beings, are chained to a chair in the bottom of a cave, and that all we see are shadows cast by puppets and fires, right, in the background
that are behind us. Yeah.
Right. And what we see are images in front of us. Okay. Or images, shadows, right? Yeah. And the shadows are representations of puppets, which themselves are not the real things, right? So that we're twice removed from reality. We see the shadows of puppets, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're engaged with. Now, to understand all the depth of that, right, would take a full class in Platonism. But but there is something about that we should all recognize, which is that, especially in our time, and I think if Plato had been aware of TV, even much less the internet, he would have been like, "Yep, shadows in the cave," right? I mean, we are so. What we often, again, this kind of goes with a healthy skepticism. Again, I'm not a radical skeptic. I'm not saying that there's no certitude, that we have no knowledge or something like that. We do have knowledge. We do have truth. We do get certitude. But it's also the case that a lot of what is presented to us is an image of an image of an image, right? Is a shadow that in the cave, he's talking about our ordinary life in the city, right? And the city for him is the political community that we move among shadows, right? And that means that we need to be cautious about all presentations, right? Even CSA, check us up, right? See if what I'm saying is true about the allegory of the cave. That won't offend me. That'll make me happy, right? I'll be happy if you do that, right? So yeah, as I was saying, with CSA, check us up. Every media presentation,
Yeah.
every video, every especially videos, every damn meme, right? I mean, come on, I enjoy a good meme as anybody else, but memes are not thinking, right? They're not logic, they're not definitions, they're not arguments. They're kind of like maybe a half a premise of an argument or something.
Yeah.
Again, I think they're funny. I'm not saying that memes are evil. I'm just saying, don't think that they're thinking. Recognize that they're just an image of an image of an image of an image, right?
Yeah.
So again, all that isn't to say we shouldn't have certainty. You know what I'm certain of, Jason? The Apostles' Creed. I'm certain of that, right?
Yeah.
The ins and outs of this or that contingent events that may or may not have happened, or how they happen. There's a lot of things I just don't know about those things, and I don't want to pretend I know them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And again, this goes back to, there's this war for the time that our minds are going to be spent on these things in 2021 is not shaping up to be anything less than an extension of 2020. So
worse.
yeah. So the first 7 days were
sorry,
not
guys.
that great, but, yeah. So, but at the same time, tough times, make for strong people. And this is where as Catholics, if we don't have our minds on straight, if we don't have our heads on straight, we can easily be led astray. You can easily be led down rabbit holes of conspiracies and or even just even if you're focusing on something that is true and worthy, if it takes your focus off of God and it takes your focus off of what is most important, then it's going to do harm. And I think and I think that's one of the tricks of the devil is he doesn't just he doesn't just tell a lie, but he twists the truth. So he's not going to say, well, here's a choice between good and evil. Well, that's easy for most Catholics, even that have a minimal spiritual life. I'm going to choose the good as opposed to the evil. But what the devil does do is he puts two goods in front of you.
Right.
And he wants you to choose the lesser good and ignore the higher good.
Right. Yeah.
So it's something for us to be aware of, to look out for, understand the reality of it, and try to guard ourselves against it. Again, that doesn't mean that we don't disengage from the world altogether and kind of go form our own little community, in the southeast corner of Saskatchewan or something like that. But we try to focus our attention and have those priorities and give to God what is God, and give to the world what we can.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. But in the right order, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, there's I think a very interesting and provocative book. I know you've read, Jason, called The Benedict Option.
Oh yeah,
deals with some of these issues, and even Rod Dreher, who wrote that, that people have strong reactions to the book, but often one of the things that's ignored in his book is that he says even that there's a variety of ways in which that can be realized.
Yeah,
that is the Benedict Option. It might, for some people, mean remote intentional communities, but for most of us, it won't. And in addition to that, he says, look, there's not a absolute dichotomy between civic engagement and following the Benedict Option, right? I mean, you can be civically engaged and be developing alternative institutions, right? Which is what that book is really about. Last point I want to hit on, Jason, we got time for one more?
Yeah.
Okay, is healthy stoicism.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, clear thinking, healthy skepticism, and healthy stoicism. Now, again, I'm not advocating here stoicism in the dogmatic or strong sense, right? Or comprehensive sense. But I think the Stoics develop some ideas that are useful, right, to anybody who's trying to follow right reason and true faith. One of those is this just great saying by Epictetus, and this fits some with what you were talking about, but Epictetus has a little book, it's called The Handbook, and it's Enchiridion, I believe is the name. It starts with this great line about, some things are in our control and some things are not in our control. And those things that are not in our control are slavish, and it's slavish to pursue them.
Yeah.
And I think, it's a kind of strong saying. It's meant to be. Stoics are actually, one of the things I like about the Roman Stoics is they're kind of preachy. They're trying to get your attention,
Sure.
And so they use, strong language about things sometimes. But, there are just a lot of things outside of our control, right? And what Epictetus is really wanting us to do is say, look, if you put your time, your energy, right, into those things that are outside of your control, to the neglect of the things that are in your control,
Yeah.
right, then you're acting irrationally, right, because you're trying to control something that isn't under your control, right? And your feelings about it, your anxiety, your anger, your tweet, your email, etc., about that thing that's not under your control doesn't change that fact, right? All you did is waste time.
Yeah. You're just going to drive yourself insane.
Exactly. Yeah. Man. Instead, focus on what you can control, right?
Yeah.
And act well there. See, that's where you have the actual possibility of virtue, right?
Yeah.
That's where you have the actual possibility of bettering the world or serving your society, right? One of the things I think about with my children is that in raising them, of course, I just get a lot of joy out of my children, for sure. But one of the aspects of being their father is thinking that I'm raising them, and I have a duty to raise them as good citizens, right? I'm not raising them just for themselves, for me. I'm not even raising them just for themselves.
Sure.
I'm raising them for everyone else, right? And so one of the best ways I serve the community, and this sounds weird when we say it, is I serve the community by trying to be a good father, right?
Yeah.
And that is a real way, of serving the community, because it's under my control and it's effective. Now, all parents know no parenthood is going to guarantee outcomes.
Yeah.
But that's a place where we can have a real impact.
And the thing I'll add to that is no statistic that your favorite group takes a poll on, no church survey is going to be able to recognize that. So as much as we're obsessed with our statistics, they're never going to get at the inner life of the family. They're never going to get at the inner life of a husband and a father and a wife and a mother and children. Right. You're never going to get at that. And so much of what we're focused on is statistics. No, again, go back, like you said, go back to those first principles, go back to those things that we know for sure.
Right.
You have a vocation. You have you have a role to play that God has given to you and nobody else.
Right.
That we can be certain of. That grab a hold of that and run.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, hammer away at that. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Those are that's where you can do the good.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, we don't want to neglect the things that God has given us, or the people that God has put into our care for those lesser goods. I think you hit on one of the big points that I think is I think if you're going to really focus on anything in 2021, I think it should be avoiding anxiety. And this is one thing that it's not just a practical and a mental health thing. It's a spiritual thing, and I got a great quote here from St. Francis de Sales from Introduction to the Devout Life. When he talks about anxiety of the mind, and I think it is absolutely key for guiding you through 2021. Maybe we should have put this at the very beginning, because this is the one thing I want people to get out of this. He says that anxiety of the mind is not so much an abstract temptation as the source whence various temptations arise.
Right.
So I mean, it's not just that I am anxious and I'm all these other things. No, he's saying that this anxiety of the mind is going to be the root of all these other temptations and all these other issues that are gonna arise. Losing that piece of the soul that begins with the anxiety of that's in your mind and stuff. So if we can keep up with our prayer life, if we can try to focus on those things that actually matter, that we have control over, like you said, taking those, those lessons from the Stoics, right?
That's right. Yeah.
We can, avoid unnecessary anxiety, which again, St. Francis is saying that this is the source whence various temptations arise.
That's good. Yeah.
So I think that's just absolutely key. If we want to make it through this blasted year, through this blessed year, there we go. That's better. Through this blessed year,
Sure.
we need to do that. We have to do that.
Yeah, I would just say that Jason, and just adding here is that I think the things we've laid out here are a way of looking at 2021, eyes wide open.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm no Pollyanna, right? I see the evils of the world.
Sure.
Right. But I think what we're talking about here are things that should help us to be content and excellent, joyful, even in these circumstances, right? As Christians, as people loving wisdom, pursuing wisdom, we should be people, right, who are content, effective, and joyful, even in these circumstances. And that's possible without delusion, right?
Yeah.
Seeing the evil as evil. But that if we have if we think clearly, if we have a healthy skepticism, and a healthy stoicism, those will all contribute to overcoming anxiety, right?
Sure.
To helping us focus on our vocation, right? The ordinary duties. One of my favorite saints is Saint Jose Maria Escrivá.
Yeah.
And his emphasis on, right, the ordinary duties of our vocation. All of these things go together and can help us live in reality, see things as they are, right, and yet remain, effective and joyful and excellent, right?
Yeah. And I think when you have that, along with that clarity of the mind, when great circumstances, call you to act,
sure,
you can do that with faith, with certitude, with hope,
that's right,
and with love. You can do that.
Sure.
And but if we remain in this state of uncertainty and anxiety, when those virtuous calls come, we may cower, or
That's
we
right.
may simply fold and not act.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. One just last thing here to add to all that we've said here. I know we've got a bucket full of stuff, but that's good. It means you should go back and listen to this episode.
Share with your friends.
Share with others. And again, this is going to sound a little goofy and a little Pollyannish maybe, but I think it's just true. I know it's true for my own temperament. Is part of having your eyes wide open and being realistic is also spotting the good, right?
Yeah.
We have a almost biological preference for negativity, as almost like a survival instinct, right? And we have a bias towards the negative, and that actually can cause you to think inaccurately.
Yeah.
Do you follow me? Right.
Oh yeah.
If you're only
absolutely.
seeing the negative, then that's not the whole picture, right? And in so many conversations in the last month or so I've tried, like, you're not seeing the whole picture, right? There are other things here. And the way I like to talk about this, and again, this sounds a little goofy, but I think it's true, is gratitude, right? I mean, it is exercising gratitude. See also, I'm not saying don't see the evil, see the evil where it is evil, but see also the good that divine providence has placed in your life.
Yeah.
Right. That is also part of the picture, right? That your life is probably full of good things if you'll open your eyes, right, and embrace them.
Absolutely. And the more, and the thing also is with God's grace, with that gratefulness and the focusing on the good, it actually becomes easier to spot what is bad,
sure,
and what is evil. And when we're not focused on the good, you can have things in disguise and focus on things that are not necessarily bad or evil, or just be mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I completely agree with you. Well, I hope our listeners, I hope we've given you some things to think about and some practical points to take away to really set your mind straight, to focus on the things that matter, and also to think about the things that we can control, the things that we are responsible for, and most importantly, to turn our mind toward God in the times of uncertainty. Know that He there's great truth to the little nursery rhyme, right? He's got the whole world in His hands. So there's providence is there. He has gone before us, and He goes with us. And it's important for us to keep that in mind, and don't let the world destroy your peace. That's what the devil wants. And we just want to encourage you with good Catholic wisdom and the tools of philosophy to help you do that. So in the new year, we're going to be rolling out all sorts of new content. And we hope that you stick with us, stay along for the ride. We're excited. And we just want to thank you for everything that has happened over the past couple of years with Catholic Studies Academy. And so if you haven't already, check out all of our content over at CatholicStudiesAcademy.com. Until next time, God bless.